hands were wet, but I hadn't touched water. That morning, I stood at the kitchen sink staring at a glass I just washed for the second time. It wasn't dirty. It hadn't been. But my mind had gone somewhere strange, and when I blinked, the sponge was in my hand again, tracing the same invisible circle inside that glass. The faucet was off. Still, my hands were wet. Maybe they'd been sweating. Or maybe something else inside me was trying to spill out. Her suitcase was already by the door. Marn had packed the night before. Methodically, like she was checking off a list in her head I wasn't allowed to see. Pajamas, heels, a silk robe I didn't recognize. The toothbrush she could have borrowed but didn't. She packed as if she were leaving for a new life, not just a weekend. She didn't kiss me goodbye, just a pat on my shoulder like I was a couch pillow she appreciated for its comfort. She said the words, "Back Sunday night. Love you." But they fell flat. There was no lift in her voice, no glance back. She closed the door behind her like someone closing a chapter they no longer wished to reread. I stood there for a long time. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, more like it's waiting for something terrible to happen. And that's when it started. The unraveling wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was a single notification, a sound on my phone I usually ignored. But that morning I picked it up and the message on the screen made my throat tighten. It was from a man I didn't know. At least, I didn't recognize the name. But the picture, that was Marn, clear as day in a mirror, holding up her phone with a smile I hadn't seen in months. Her hair was done in waves, not how she ever wore it around me. She was wearing something red, something small. And behind her, in the reflection, him. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because suddenly the table was in front of me and my phone was still glowing in my hand. I read the message 3 times before I understood it wasn't a mistake. "Hope you're cool, man. She said you were open. If not, my bad. Peace." That's all it said. No explanation, no apology, just that. Hope you're cool. I wasn't. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. What I did instead was nothing. For a while, at least. I sat there in that chair until the daylight changed and shadows climbed up the kitchen walls. I listened to the refrigerator hum. I listened to the clock tick. And I realized for the first time in a long time that I felt awake. She thought I would wait, but I didn't. And by the time she came back, the locks had changed and so had I. I didn't open the fridge. I just stood there, finger resting on the handle, eyes fixed on an old coffee stain on the tile below. I must have walked past it 100 times before and never really seen it. But now it stared back at me like a question I didn't know how to answer. The light outside had shifted soft and orange, now stretching through the blinds like lazy fingers. She had been gone for 28 hours. I hadn't eaten, hadn't changed clothes. I don't think I'd even sat down properly. I kept moving from room to room like I was trying to catch up with something I didn't understand. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was quiet, deep inside. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. More like the eye of a storm that hadn't arrived yet. Everything in my body felt like it was waiting for impact. The first call came just before 2 p.m. I didn't answer. Unknown number, no voicemail. Then another and another. Eventually, I turned the phone off completely. Not because I was afraid to talk. I just didn't want to hear her voice. Not the version of her that I knew would be waiting on the other end. Soft, careful, calculated. That sugary tone she used when she knew she'd gone too far but still wanted to keep the upper hand. She had already left more than the house. She had left us. And I knew that now with certainty. I opened my laptop, not to stalk her, not to confirm what I already felt twisting in my gut. I opened it to escape. I searched bus routes, cheap flights, nearby towns I hadn't thought about in years. I didn't need a destination. I just needed a direction. In her email, she'd left a copy of the hotel reservation. Mineral Springs Weekend Renewal Package, Deluxe Double Suite. I froze. That was the same place I sent her as a surprise getaway idea 5 years ago. She said it was too expensive, too unnecessary. She deleted the email after skimming it. But now here it was again, booked with someone else for the same weekend. My mouth went dry. Not because of betrayal, not even because of shock. It was something colder, the realization that she had remembered. She knew exactly what it meant to me and still chose to give that moment to another man. I took off my wedding ring, not in a dramatic way, not with music playing or tears streaming, just quietly. I placed it on a paper napkin at the kitchen table, like a piece of silverware I no longer needed. Then I walked out of the house. I didn't take my phone, didn't lock the door. I didn't even grab a jacket. I just walked through the streets I thought I knew, past familiar porches and mailboxes and trees that had always seemed so stable. But everything looked different now. I wasn't walking to anyone. I wasn't seeking advice. I wasn't about to make some grand speech or threaten revenge. I was walking away from her, from the version of me that allowed all of this to keep happening while I called it love. And that was the most powerful thing I had done in years. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave a note because there was nothing left to explain. She believed I would wait. She had always believed that. But this time she was wrong. When she came back, I would already be gone, and she would have to learn what silence truly sounds like. The first thing I did was fold every shirt I owned. Not because I had a plan, not because I intended to leave the house that day or pack a bag or even pretend like I was moving on. But folding gave my hands something to do. Took longer than it should have. Not because there were too many. I'd never been much for clothing, just jeans, work polos, maybe a couple button-downs for nicer dinners. But I unfolded each one, laid it flat across the edge of the bed, and smoothed the fabric with the side of my palm. Again and again, each shirt felt like a year, each crease a habit. The room was completely silent, except for the whisper of cotton dragging across my skin. At some point, I opened the window. The late afternoon air moved in quietly, touching the curtains like a stranger testing the mood of a room. It smelled like old bark and gasoline. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower coughed itself to life. The sound was jarring, ordinary, and unwelcome at the same time. I stared out across the cul-de-sac. A kid rode by on a scooter. A man in a green sweatshirt carried groceries into his garage. The world kept going, oblivious. That's when I noticed her slipper, one of those cheap terry cloth ones with the pink stitching. She'd left it just under the bench by the front door, abandoned, like it had no purpose, now that she had slipped into heels for someone else. I stared at that slipper for a long time, and then I picked it up. I didn't smell it, didn't clutch it, didn't cry. I just held it, walked to the trash and dropped it in without blinking. Then I took everything she'd left out. Half-empty moisturizer, a hairbrush, a bottle of vanilla body spray, her favorite chamomile tea, and one by one placed them in a cardboard box I'd taken down from the attic earlier. The same box we used when we moved in here 10 years ago, when we were still full of stupid plans and second-hand furniture and quiet little hopes about breakfast nooks and clubs and maybe next summer road trips. The last thing I packed was the photo, the one by the hallway, the one with her chin on my shoulder. Both of us half laughing, eyes squinting at the sun. We looked young, stupidly young. That kind of young where everything feels permanent. I placed it face down at the bottom of the box. Then I took that box and drove it 2 miles south to a place called Beacon House. It's where she volunteers sometimes for families who need emergency items after fires, floods, or rough times. I left the box at the front door. No name, no message. Just left it there. I didn't feel noble. I didn't feel generous. I just didn't want her things anymore. I returned home to a half-empty bathroom and a bedroom that smelled less like lavender and more like air. Then, for the first time in over a decade, I opened the second bedroom. It had always been the extra room, the one we used for storage or when nieces and nephews visited for the holidays. Inside, it still had that faded yellow paint from the previous owners, with one corner peeling slightly from where the humidity never quite left. I walked inside, closed the door, and lay down on the bare mattress without sheets. I didn't want softness. I wanted stillness. I let my shoes hang off the edge and stared at the ceiling, watching the fan blade spin. My body was still, but my mind was waiting because she would return tomorrow. And when she did, she'd find a version of this house that no longer accepted her. 4:16 a.m. First movement. The hallway light flickers on, soft, brief, then off again. The wheels of her suitcase click against the entryway tile. She exhales slow, not tired, measured, like she's practicing what she'll say before saying it. She thinks I'm asleep. She moves through the kitchen, opens the refrigerator, then closes it. No drink, no food, just a reflex. The microwave clock flashes in the dark. 4:18. Bedroom door opens. She pauses. I'm not there. She doesn't call out, just scans the room. Her scent's no longer in the bedding. Her water bottle's gone. Her book, the one she left on the nightstand, is tucked away in a box in the garage. I put it there with everything else. She sets her purse down, sits on the edge of the bed, looks at her phone, then opens the closet, half empty. She stands still for 17 seconds, then closes it slowly, as if not to disturb something. 4:26 a.m. Second bedroom, door ajar, lights off. She pushes it open quietly. I'm there, awake, sitting in a chair I never use, facing the window. I don't look at her. My eyes are on the driveway. She speaks first. You're up. No response. Didn't expect you to be in here. I blink once. She takes a step inside, then stops. I speak. I didn't change the locks. I didn't throw anything out. But I started separating. I thought that was fair. She crosses her arms. Is this about me going? Pause. I don't answer. She continues. I told you I needed space, that it wasn't about anyone else. It was for me. Another pause. I reach over, pick up a small piece of paper folded in half, place it on the windowsill between us. She glances at it, doesn't touch it. That's what I think it is. It's a receipt, I say, for the room, your trip, the booking email, the spa add-on, the bottle of wine he ordered, the extra towels, the late checkout, and the new necklace. She doesn't move. You said you were offline. No signal. She swallows. I didn't want to argue. You didn't. You just stopped being married and hoped I wouldn't notice. We both go quiet. The silence between us is hard, but not heavy. I'm going to stay in this room, I say. For how long? Until I'm ready to let you leave. She laughs once, short, sarcastic. I already came back. I shake my head, finally look her in the eyes. No, you didn't. 4:42 a.m. She walks out. Door stays open. I stay in the chair. The fan above me spins. There's no anger, no sadness, just time and space. And the quiet sound of someone who thought she could return to where she'd never be again. The next morning arrived without ceremony. The house wasn't different. Light still pushed through the blinds at the same angle. Coffee still brewed at the same speed, and the floor still creaked in the exact same places. But she moved around it all like a stranger borrowing someone else's routine. She didn't ask how I slept, didn't mention the room, didn't even acknowledge the folded towel I had left for her on the kitchen stool. That towel had always been for guests, not for her. That was the point. I didn't speak either. I poured 1 mug of coffee, not 2, and sat at the dining table without waiting. She lingered by the sink, staring out the window with a stillness that felt like fear-wearing politeness. After breakfast, she went to the bedroom and closed the door. I heard the drawers opening, the zipper of her suitcase, the soft shuffle of something being folded more carefully than necessary. I didn't ask what she was packing. I didn't ask if she was going back to him, or if she ever really left him at all. I didn't need to. Some silences are louder than confessions. Instead, I went outside and read the leaves. The kind of task you don't think about, one that lets your body work while your mind stays frozen. It was too warm for the season. Bees hovered around the garden hose. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once and then stopped. When I looked up, she was watching me from the bedroom window. She didn't move when I saw her. She didn't wave. She just stood there with one hand on the curtain like someone checking if the world outside was still the same as she remembered. Around noon, I left the house, not far, just to the hardware store. I needed new screws for the second bedroom's door frame. Stuck when you closed it. I wanted it to close cleanly now. The man behind the counter recognized me. He asked if I'd ever finished building that fence I mentioned last spring. I told him I was working on a different kind of project now. He laughed. I didn't. When I got back, she wasn't home. Her car was gone, her charger missing, the folded towel untouched, the suitcase not in the bedroom anymore. On the dining table, she had left behind a note card with her handwriting on one side and nothing else. No apology, no explanation. Just a question. Was it really that easy to stop loving me? I read it once. Then I folded it in half and slid it under the fridge. Not to hide it, but because I didn't want it to belong to the surface of my home anymore. By nightfall, I rearranged the living room. I moved the couch from where it had always faced the TV and instead turned it toward the big window looking out at the street. I didn't know why, it just felt right. The house looked unfamiliar, like it had exhaled after years of holding its breath. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was sharing it with a ghost. I didn't text her. I didn't wonder where she went or if she'd try to come back. I simply sat in the chair near the window, one leg folded over the other, a blanket over my shoulders, and watched the sky turn black. A man across the street adjusted his porch light. A teenage girl rode her bike past and smiled at me. The world impossibly kept moving. Not in spite of her absence, but because of it. I had never planned to disappear. But sometimes what you become when someone breaks your rhythm is far more powerful than anything you were before. She left to explore something new, but so did I. And mine didn't require leaving the house to start. Day 4. Her name no longer appears in my call history. I deleted all contacts with identical initials, not out of spite efficiency. My phone log is clean, so is the calendar. I cleared the joint reminders, her dentist appointment, the shared Netflix password renewal, her cousin's wedding in June, the reservation for the anniversary dinner next month canceled, refund pending. The kitchen has been restructured, her side of the pantry emptied, spices she brought back from that trip to Santa Fe trashed. They were expired anyway. Her coffee mug, the one with the chipped lip and faded floral print set in the donation box along with the souvenir hoodie from her yoga retreat. I used gloves to handle her beauty products. There was no symbolic reason. I just didn't want lotion on my hands. Mail. I sorted it by name. Hers went into a manila envelope marked Temp Hold. It sits near the front door under the umbrella rack. If she comes back, I'll give it to her. If not, I'll forward it. There is no emotional weight tied to the mail. It is just mail. I changed the Wi-Fi name. It used to be a blend of our pet names, which I now find embarrassing. It is now simply Marlanome_02. The password is the street number plus the month I was born. Not because it's easy to remember, but because it has nothing to do with her. She never remembered my birthday without asking. The bedroom was not rearranged. It was shut. I sealed the door with painter's tape, one strip across the top and bottom. I wrote, "Do not enter," and sharp it. Not because I planned to keep people out, but because I needed to create a border. That space is no longer in operation. I sleep in the second room now, where I replaced the curtain rods and removed the bedside lamp that flickered when she read. The fridge is simple. Eggs, 3 apples, a bottle of seltzer, no shared condiments. Her almond milk is gone. I went back to regular milk, no debates about cholesterol. Music. No playlists remain. I scrubbed the US folder from my Spotify. I listened to silence now. It's functional. One friend reached out, Barry from work. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was in a transitionary phase. He said I sounded unusually calm. I told him that's what happens when your mind stops debating things your heart already knows. I went to the hardware store again. Babcock fixed the windowsill she always said was off. She never fixed it. I did. Took 38 minutes. I reviewed the bank statements. There were no surprises. She didn't drain anything. She didn't steal. She just spend in patterns. Gas, wine, cafes. One charge for a couple's massage. I highlighted it. Not for evidence, just to acknowledge it happened. I'm not planning revenge. I'm not composing letters. I'm not watching the door. I'm not wondering who he is or what they did or how often. I don't require that data anymore. It's not relevant to the current version of me. There are no candles burning, no symbolic fires. Just a man in a house living without interruptions. When she left to explore something new, she assumed I would stay paused like a television show waiting for her to press play again. But I didn't freeze. I rewrote the program. And now, even if she walks back in with apologies and old clothes and familiar excuses, she'll find a home that doesn't speak her language anymore. 6:08 a.m. The subject wakes. No alarm. Window half open. No vocalization. Sits up slowly. Right hand scratches left shoulder. No stretching. Breath measured. Eyes fixed on corner of room for approximately 12 seconds. 6:11 a.m. Bathroom light flicks on. Electric toothbrush. 90 seconds. Cold water splashed to face. Mirror checked. Not stared at. No shaving. 6:18 a.m. Enters kitchen. Kettle turned on. 1 mug. Plain black coffee. No sugar. No milk. Toast and toaster. Burnt slightly. Eaten standing. No devices used. No phone, no newspaper, no television. 6:34 a.m. Garage door opens. Empty cardboard boxes taken from corner, placed into trunk of sedan. Kerno started. 6:46 a.m. Living room vacuumed. Moderate effort. No music. Curtains opened. Bright outside. Cloud cover 40%. No wind. Street quiet. 7:15 a.m. Subject enters closed bedroom, formerly shared space. Remains inside for 19 minutes. Carries out 3 framed photographs, 1 pair of earrings, 2 books, a cardigan, and a sealed plastic bag of cosmetics. Items placed inside garage bin labeled Final. 7:47 a.m. House phone rings. Subject does not answer. Call goes to voicemail. 3 seconds after ring ends. Subject walks to window. Remains there for 6 minutes. No movement. No visible expression. 8:12 a.m. Subject drives to recycling center. Boxes unloaded in silence. Nods to staff. Returns home. Does not turn on radio during trip. 9 a.m. Mailbox opened. 2 letters, 1 catalog, 1 envelope marked Insurance. Subject places envelope on table. Catalog dropped in bin without reading. 10:16 a.m. Walk begins. Standard pace. Path through neighborhood park. Duration 41 minutes. Makes no phone calls. Passes 5 individuals. Acknowledges 2 with nods. Sits briefly on bench under elm tree. 5 minutes. No visible activity. Walk resumes. 11:12 a.m. Returns home. Removes shoes. Washes hands. Opens laptop. Deletes joint photo album from cloud service. Clears browser history. Unsubscribes from shared streaming platform. 11:56 a.m. Subject eats sandwich, turkey, cheese, mustard, no chips, no drink. 12:34 p.m. Laundry machine running. Contains 1 load. Subject folds previous dry batch. No pause, no scent check. No sentimental pause on clothing. Everything stacked. 2:03 p.m. Trash taken out. Subject carries box labeled junk drawer. Entire contents discarded. Includes old receipts and used batteries. A love note dated 6 years ago. No sorting. No salvaging. 3:20 p.m. Phone turned on. 10 missed calls. 1 voicemail. Subject listens. Voice not audible to observer. Subject deletes. Message. No replay. 4:41 p.m. Chair placed on porch. Subject sits facing west. Remains seated for 32 minutes. Does not use phone. Does not drink. Still 5:35 p.m. Neighbor passes. Waves. Subject waves back. No conversation initiated. 6:12 p.m. Microwave reheats leftovers. Chicken and rice. Small portion. No condiments. Subject eats at table. Uses paper napkin. Disposes of napkin. Washes plate. 7 p.m. Shower 8 minutes. Water temperature unknown. No singing. No talking. 7:15 p.m. Subject enters second bedroom. Closes door. No TV. No sound. 9:10 p.m. Light turned off. End of log. No mentions of her. No signs of return. No signs of waiting. He is not gone. He is not fine. But he is done. 2 weeks after she left, the house felt unfamiliar, but in a good way. Not like I was living inside a memory. Not like I was tiptoeing around ghosts. Felt like stepping into a place I'd never lived in before. And yet, I knew where everything was. I had placed it all myself. I had chosen what stayed and what didn't. The choices were quiet. There were no announcements, but they added up. That Saturday, I opened every window, Not for dramatic effect, just to let the air circulate. Freshness matters. Light came in through different angles. Now, thanks to the furniture I'd moved, the objects I'd removed, without her perfume in the air, the rooms began to smell like what they actually were. Clean wood, old books, lemon-scented cleaner. I could breathe again. Not deeply, not dramatically, just naturally. Around noon, I sat on the front steps with a cup of black coffee and watched the neighbors rake leaves. I didn't feel left behind. I didn't feel angry. I felt steady. A breeze moved through, and for once, I didn't think about whether she might call. My phone was inside, and I had no reason to bring it out. That afternoon I took a drive, not to escape, not to clear my head, but simply to go. I ended up an hour north in a town I hadn't seen in 20 years. It had a bookstore I used to like. I walked in without a list, browsed slowly, and picked up 2 paperbacks by authors I didn't recognize. One of them had a handwritten note inside the cover, a gift from someone to someone else. I bought it anyway. I liked the idea of continuing someone else's quiet story. Later that week, I signed up for a woodworking class at the local community center. I didn't do it to find myself or stay busy. I just liked the idea of making something real with my hands, something I could keep, something I could give. By Friday, I had placed the last box of her things in a quiet corner of the garage, labeled, sealed, untouched. If she ever needed it, she could have it. But I didn't need to carry it anymore. And when the sun set that night, I didn't sit in the dark. I turned on the light, my light, and stayed.